He's back to pass. Pressure coming. He's going to get hit in the end zone. That's going to be a safety.
It's now time for Gridiron, State of the Union.
Another touchdown, Porter Ridge, and they've gone up. The score is 23-17.
Presented by DMR Reconstruction, North Carolina's leader in quality insurance restoration services, with crews on standby 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. DMR Reconstruction has your restoration needs covered. Give them a call at 704-327-4028.
He's going to hand it off to Byram. Byram on the right-hand side. He's going to be into the end zone. Touchdown, Monroe.
Gridiron State of the Union is your insider's look each week into Union County High School football.
Malcolm fires one off, and it's into the end zone. Touchdown, Piedmont.
Now we head into the DMR Reconstruction Studio and your host, Brian Stevenson.
Monroe remains undefeated. Marvin Ridge stretches their win streak to 5. And Coach Luke Hyatt leads his new team to a big victory over his old team. Those are the headlines of the Week 10 edition of Gridiron State of the Union. I'm your host, Brian Stevenson. Last week, Weddington beat Cuthbertson. Monroe rolled over Mount Pleasant. Marvin Ridge knocked off Sun Valley. Piedmont wins big over Anson. Forest Hills over Parkwood. And Central Academy and Porter Ridge both in the loss column last week. But now it's time to take our trip around Union, and we start with Sideline Mike and our WIXC Game of the Week.
Our WIXC Game of the Week features Sun Valley taking the short drive to Weddington. Last week, the Spartans lost a tough one to Marvin Ridge, 62-34. Quarterback Sam Howell threw for 212 yards and a score, but had 2 picks. The Spartans need a victory this week to still be in the hunt for the conference crown. Their opponent, Weddington, has only one loss this season. That was a triple overtime loss to Monroe. Last week, they beat Cuthbertson 27-17. The Warriors have been a favorite to win the Southern Carolina Conference since the start of the season, but when they play Sun Valley, you can throw out the record books. Tune in for this one on 11:90 a.m. WIXC this Friday night. Coverage begins at 7. Next up, Porter Ridge at Butler. The season continues to be a tough one for Porter Ridge. Last week they lost to Myers Park 24-10. The loss drops the Pirates to 1-7. Their opponent this week is 7-2. Last week the Bulldogs won a close one, 16-14 against Rocky River. That's the story on Porter Ridge. Now let's go to Derek Skinner.
The Cuthbertson Cavaliers will try to get back on track this week when they host Anson. Last week they fell to Weddington. It was the Cavaliers' 4th straight loss and drops their record to 3-5. Coach David Johnson is hoping to get his men back on track against the 1-7 Bearcats. Next up, Monroe versus Parkwood. The Redhawks travel to Rough Edge on Friday night, hoping to keep their perfect record intact. The Redhawks got revenge on the defending Rocky River champs Mount Pleasant last week, 45-20. Braxton Knotts had 2 long touchdown runs for 41 and 45 yards, respectively. Their opponent, Parkwood, is coming off a tough loss to Forest Hills last week. The Rebels played tough for 3 quarters against the Jackets, but lost momentum in the 4th. The Rebels will need a solid 4 quarters if they hope to beat the Redhawks. And finally, Central Academy hosts Mount Pleasant. The Cougars are hoping to end their 3-game skid. Last week, they lost a tough one to West Stanley 14-13. Mount Pleasant is having their own troubles of late. The Tigers have dropped 2 straight in the Rocky River Conference. That's the report on Central Academy. Now, let's go to Ken Ogden.
The Forest Hills Yellow Jackets are 2-0 in the Rocky River Conference. The past 2 weeks, the Jackets have scored a total of 83 points. Last week against Parkwood, Zacchaeus Rory had a huge night. He threw for 273 yards and a score and ran for 101 yards. The Jackets would be in the driver's seat with Monroe for first place in the Rocky River. Next up, Piedmont hosts Marvin Ridge. This might be one of the best games of the week. Piedmont and Marvin Ridge are both coming off wins last week. The Panthers beat Anson 49-6 in the homecoming game for former Bearcat coach Luke Hyatt. Piedmont has not had trouble scoring this year, but at times their defense has been porous. That could spell trouble against Marvin Ridge. Mavericks have won 5 straight, and last week they hung 62 points on Sun Valley. The winner of this game still could have a shot at the conference title, but would definitely take a big step in securing a possible second place in the Southern Carolina. That's the story on the Panthers versus the Mavericks. Now we go back to the studio and Brian Stevenson.
Thanks a lot, Ken. One more game to mention. Union Academy travels to winless Chatham Central. When we come back, It's our roundtable segment, and we'll be joined there by Sideline Mike. Later on in the show, we'll have Marvin Ridge coach Aubrey Carter. Gridiron State of the Union. We'll be right back.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Gridiron State of the Union, brought to you exclusively by DMR Reconstruction. Fire, water, wind, or mold damage, they are your go-to source. And if you're thinking about remodeling, from the tip top of the roof to the bottom of the foundation, they can handle it for you. Windows, doors, paint, floors, vinyl siding, they do it all at DMR Reconstruction. Stop by and visit their showroom on Highway 74 in Marshville, North Carolina. You'll be glad you did. 704-327-4028, 327-4028, and they hope you're enjoying the Gridiron State of the Union, brought to you by DMR Reconstruction.
Welcome back to Gridiron State of the Union. Time now for our roundtable segment. And I'm joined by Sideline Mike. And Sideline, I tell you what, it's getting down to some really critical games here in the conference. We've talked about a lot of those off air, but let's start off with one that is really a kind of a battle for potentially second place, and that's Piedmont and a surprising Marvin Ridge team this Friday night.
Marvin Ridge has caught fire at exactly the right time. They're taking on Piedmont, as you made mention. The Mavericks having to travel to Unionville to take on the Panthers. Panthers come in at 6-2. The Mavericks in at 5-3. And this one's going to be a pretty intriguing matchup when you look at how Piedmont's played and how Marvin's come along. This is going to be a deciding factor as to how the season goes for one of these two teams.
Well, you mentioned the 5 wins for Marvin Ridge. That's 5 straight wins. So definitely on a hot streak. Piedmont has had a couple of stumbles, but both of these teams can really put up the points.
Well, and they certainly can put up the points. Alex Colonna comes in one of the highest scoring quarterbacks in the county for Marvin Ridge. When you look at it, they are on a 5-game win streak. The biggest telltale, they took down Cuthbertson and Sun Valley over the last 2 weeks. It's going to be a tough matchup for the Panthers, but it's going to be a game that I think the Unionville faithful is going to be pumped up for.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, because really even on this show last week, we kind of held out giving Marvin Ridge their due because of some of the schedule they've played, but then Sun Valley comes along last week, a team that we've seen and we know is a solid team. And really, Marvin Ridge handled them well. So is that kind of a, I would have to say, Aubrey Carter's marquee win to this point?
Well, I don't know that I would call that quite the marquee victory yet. Sun Valley is one of those teams a lot like Parkwood and a lot like, in my opinion, Central Academy this year, in the fact that they're kind of playing to what their opponents come out as. And it's kind of, it's enabled some games that maybe could have been won or lost, but they end up coming in the loss. And that was one of them. Sun Valley really could have pulled that game out. They just got off to a slow start and then make it up.
Well, let's finish up talking about our game of the week, and we talked about Sun Valley. Weddington, meanwhile, lets other teams beat each other up, and they keep winning. Certainly they control their own destiny at this point to win the conference, and we're going to feature that game on Friday night over in Weddington.
Well, listen, out of the last 3 years, this game has come down to about 9 points total when you look at it. You had a 4-overtime victory last year before last, the same thing, 49-42 victory the year before, an 11-9 victory the year before that. This is always a very, very close ball game. And Friday night is going to be more of the same. It doesn't matter how teams are faring during the season. When they meet one another in a rivalry matchup, you're going to have what we're going to have here Friday, which is going to be a great ball game.
Well, it's getting down to crunch time in the conference races. We're enjoying covering them and giving you all the details each and every week. Mike, appreciate you joining us as always, our roundtable segment. Now, coming up in just a moment, one of the coaches we just talked about, Aubrey Carter, is going to join me from the Marvin Ridge Mavericks right after this on Gridiron State of the Union.
This quick break in the action is brought to you by DMR Reconstruction, the exclusive sponsor of the Gridiron State of the Union. One of these days, you're going to want to do home improvement. New windows, new doors. Maybe you got hardwood floors you want to refinish, or you need new carpet or flooring. DMR Reconstruction is your go-to source. They also specialize in fire, water, wind, and mold damage restoration. They'll even help you deal with the insurance companies. Visit the showroom in Marshville, North Carolina, or give them a call at 704-327-4028, 24/7 for emergencies, 327-4028. Let them know you heard about them here on Wixie. And now back to more of the Gridiron State of the Union, brought to you by DMR Reconstruction.
Welcome back to Gridiron State of the Union. Brian Stevenson now with Coach Aubrey Carter of the Marvin Ridge Mavericks. And, Coach, I know you have to be pleased with the big win against Sun Valley last Friday night. That brings the win streak to 5 straight.
Yeah, been very happy with the progress the kids are making. It was definitely satisfying to beat Sun Valley, who's a quality opponent, and just hopefully keep the momentum rolling.
Talk about that game, because it really it's the most points I think you guys have scored all season. 62 points you hang on the Spartans, and really that just is probably one of the better performances offensive wise in the county this season.
It was good to see the kids execute offensively. We did a pretty good job of spreading the ball around to a bunch of different kids, getting a lot of people involved. Can't say enough about how well our offensive line played. Gave us time to throw, created, some running lanes in the running game for Caleb. It's just good for those guys to put some points on the board against a quality opponent.
This streak here started back with the win against Providence Day, and then you had Garinger, and some people, myself included, said, okay, these teams aren't the strongest teams in the world, but it's hard to argue, isn't it, Coach, with the win against somebody, like you said, a quality opponent like Sun Valley?
Yeah, I mean, we preached to the kids early in the season that, stay the course, things are going to get better, that once we get one win, things can start to snowball a little bit, because, the biggest, with our kids right now is, they have a lot of confidence, and confidence with high school kids, can breed a lot of different things, a lot of positive things, and right now our kids are very confident, and, it's showing on the field.
Talk about the practice this week, coming off of that, and what you're seeing from your guys, and especially maybe some leadership roles that some of your men are playing in this.
So far this week of practice has been very good. We know, leading into Friday night, that Piedmont's a quality opponent. They're a 6-2 football team. We're going to have to play very well to win. Leadership-wise, I've just been impressed by our seniors in general. I kind of been, talking with our seniors about, what it means to be leaders. And, I tell them all the time that, if you continue to lead, the rest of the guys will follow you. And those guys have been very receptive to that.
This is a very different type of offense that you're going to be looking at. It seems to have given a lot of people fits all season. How difficult is it to prepare for a team that you don't see something like this every day?
You got to kind of rein them back in just a little bit. Focus on fundamentals, on do your job and focus on what you're supposed to do. Because, like you said, this is an offense that you don't see every week. And give Piedmont credit, they do a very good job running the offense. And, it can give people a lot of headaches. They want to control the clock, control the tempo of the game. And allow that, it can be very, very tough.
Tell me your keys to victory against Piedmont on Friday night.
Our keys to victory is, execute our game plan. We talk about all the time with our kids that, we want to focus internally on what we need to do. I always just say, our key to success is to execute in all 3 phases of the game. And usually if you do that, the results will take care of themselves.
Thanks a lot to Coach Aubrey Carter, our Coach's Corner guest this week.
Time for Extra Points.
In my Extra Points tonight, we talk a lot about how solid Union County High School football is. And you need no more proof than to take a look at this week's AP State football rankings. In 3A, Weddington is ranked number 5 in the state with their 7-1 record. That one loss was to Monroe, which is the number 3 ranked team in the state 2A poll. And with that, we are all out of time. We have examined the state of our union, and I can report it is good. Good night, everybody.